Be having a chat with Kevin, who's one of our coaches at Beyond Alpha. He works predominantly in the relationships area, stereotypes, standards, and we're going to talk a little bit about what he's been doing at the moment. So Kev, in regards to standards, we've discussed a lot about stereotypes and standards. What's your view on that?
Well, with standards, what I've found is that a lot of people use really generic blanket terms. So they'll say, I want someone that's confident, I want someone that's successful, I want someone that's generous and outgoing. But what they fail to realise is that these blanket terms actually work against them. When you're saying that you want a confident person, confidence can be interpreted in a lot of ways. So you could be confident and be ignorant at the same time. Yeah. So your confidence may come from disregarding other people's opinions and only taking your opinions on face value without actually testing them. Success can be taken, for instance, in a negative aspect, in that someone's willing to do anything to walk over someone else to get what they want. So they lack that empathy, which is also an important part in having a partner. Another one is generosity. A lot of people see generosity as a generally positive thing, which it is. But with generosity, if someone's giving and they're just giving and letting themselves get walked over, then it also means that they lack in self-esteem or self-belief. And so using these general terms isn't really specific, and so it can mean you end up with someone that's not really what you're after. So what I suggest is being really specific about what it is in those traits that you want from someone. So if you want a confident person, you could want someone that's confident in that they know what they believe and that they want, but they're willing to listen to others. Yeah. They appreciate other people's points of views. That to me is someone who's confident but understanding as well. I suppose with so say success, for instance, someone who makes sure that what they're offering is actually going to benefit the other person. Say for instance in the sales industry, where you can have one salesman going out who's just selling the product to sell the product, or you can have someone out there who's selling the product because they believe truly that it meets someone else's needs. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, when you're saying that you have a particular person in mind that you'd like to be with, just be really specific about what it is in those traits that you want, and really break it down to that lower level.
It's quite interesting you say that, because I think standards across the board are so based on perception that we hold them so tightly, while perception is this thing that it's constantly flowing, and it's based on your upbringing. And everyone has such a different upbringing that there's so much variance in perception that your standards should also have room to move within that as your perception changes, from when you were a teenager, what you liked and the type of girl you were into, and the type of guy you were into. For women, is vastly different to what you'd be going for now. Another interesting thing that I find that you often talk about when you're coaching is stereotypes. How do you view stereotypes? Because there's always that example, that girl that says, I'm looking for somebody who is a punk rocker. Yeah. And you go, well, what makes that up? And she goes, well, I don't actually know. He could not have a job, he could be the most abusive guy, but he's a punk rocker, so that's what she wants. How do you feel about standards? What are your words of wisdom on standards?
I think the way that stereotypes and standards match in so well together is that a lot of people will say, oh, I want a guy who's adventurous and successful, for instance. They really need to be specific about what it is that they're adventurous about, and find out what is it, and question themselves what it is that they're interested in, so that they can attract someone else with those same qualities. Yeah, I guess stereotypes fits into that, because the person who wants to be with that adventurous and say spontaneous person needs to understand that that's who they are, that's who the other person is, and they need to match that in themselves. Yeah. So, for instance, if I wanted someone who was artistic and intelligent, and I'm not artistic and intelligent myself, then it makes it difficult for me to relate on a common level, but also for me to attract that person in the beginning, because without those commonalities, you have nothing to speak about really, and you just have such different ways of living life and different journeys.
unless, you know, we can construct the conversation, which we can.
Yeah, well that's true, but what I'm talking about, I suppose, is if you've got specific traits that you are looking for in someone, then you need to have some level of at least understanding on what it is that you want to attract from another person.
And when you say understanding, I think it's quite externally focused to some extent. Have you ever, and I have seen you work on it, what about the internal shift where those standards do come from? So, you know, what does the punk rocker bring you? You know, what does a person that looks like this bring you? What exactly does it mean if they look this way?
Look, that's a perfectly valid point. I suppose for me, if I wanted to be with, you know, say a punk rocker, if I wanted to be with a punk rocker, it would be expected that I would have some understanding of punk rock. And I'd need to understand the mentality that that person comes from. You're completely right in what you say about what that brings to you, because if you don't question that, then you might not realise that there's a larger audience that can also provide that same feeling. If it's a feeling that you're after. Maybe it's a scene, maybe it's maybe it's status that you want.